Yeah.
I'm not a good topic for holiday
You guys are
season.
too silly.
Patience is just not.
And actually, it was a pretty good conversation. And if you want to catch it, just go to YouTube, right? And you can see it on there. I think the YouTube video that I did was cut down to about 45 minutes, I think. I might be mistaken, but one of the shorter ones. But patience, that's okay. Patience, really, we found that it really does play a huge role, and I still really don't know what the Pali term for what the Buddha called patience. Does anybody know what the,
Mark is
it's
the poly.
Mark is the Pali.
I can't tell you.
yeah,
I can't even remember what the Sanskrit term is. I can't remember.
or the Sanskrit,
Sometimes
yeah.
they're similar, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't, it kind of fails me, but it does have a lot to do with mindfulness. I mean, we boiled that down. And I think actually I got something here that, yeah, a little bit from Pema Chodron. Everybody knows who Pema Chodron is. She's the Tibetan nun, who's I think she's an American, but she said the Buddhist teachings tell us that patience is the antidote to anger and aggression. I think we can all understand that. Aggression comes in many forms: resentment, bitterness, being very critical, complaining, etc. Aggression is an energy that is determined to resolve the situation into a hard, solid, fixed pattern in which somebody wins and somebody loses. Kind of interesting. But the point is that word patience, you don't really hear that a lot in the Buddhist teachings, but it is very key, to the practice, and to have patience for ourselves and patience for others. I think it's very important. And the reason we kind of sum things up by saying that if we have problems with our meditation practice, probably points to the fact that we don't have a lot of patience for ourselves for some reason. That we have a little trouble. And that can come and go too, the ability to have patience and the ability not to. One day we might have all the patience in the world, and the next day we might not. I know if, caregivers or mothers, fathers, people with children, they can experience that, I'm sure, where you have a lot of patience for the younger person or the person you're caring for. And then the next day or the next moment, the patience isn't there. It's just like But so that's really something that we can look for in our meditation. Just wanted to kind of put that out there before we start our practice. And one thing I think I'd like to. We can talk about anything after meditation, even being thankful for what we have, which would be kind of ideal since this is, the brink of Valentine's Day. Did you find my pet cricket back there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jiminy. Yeah, he's my pet cricket. So he had some friends here, but I escorted him out earlier. But that one, he's tricky. So
He's the top of the
yeah,
food chain.
but he's kind of cute. So he's a boy. Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about how meditation and health and how it can be healing for us. I think we know that from the standpoint of stress, and the less stress we have, the healthier we are. And they say about 90% of all hospital visits are related to stress. So that's pretty astounding and incredible. But I thought maybe we'll start off after our meditation and talk a little bit more about that, later on. But the health effects of meditation, and of course, meditation is a de-stressor, right? We all know that. And the less stress we have, the more we can enjoy life and feel more complete, and actually the more patience we have as well. So it's got all sorts of benefits. This is, I was reading from the meditation teacher training program. There's some very good material on the meditation and health, both physicality and psychological health benefits of meditation. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later. Yeah, I was going to actually ask if there's any questions before we start.
I wasn't here last week to talk, but for me, I've noticed that I've got extraordinary patience in certain areas and total lack of patience in other areas.
Yeah.
But that's not the question. Ananda, Buddha's second in command or whatever, he awakened when he finally gave up, right? He just, let's say, impatiently said, screw this, it's never going to work for me.
That's true.
He
Yeah.
lost his patience, and he just completely gave up. To heck with this, and that was the. So I was just going to ask. I mean, sometimes perhaps. I mean, how does that work into?
I don't know if I would actually say that.
He lost his patience.
He lost his patience. But, you can. I mean, I guess I can see that. But I think he was still holding on to something. He wasn't letting go of everything that he could let go of. He was holding on. So anytime there's any kind of pain and suffering for us, there's some attachment, and even wanting to wake up. It's a ponderable thing, though. To think that Ananda had so much impatience, like just screw it. I mean, just. Let's just end this game right now, and then that's when he became enlightened. Maybe that is, a loss of patience. Quitting the game. When you look at it that way, it was very beneficial for him. Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. I appreciate that, putting that out there. I can't offhand think of any other examples like that, but except for, the Buddha, he became very impatient with his quest, for enlightenment. And that's what drove him out of his house, his father's house anyway. The kingdom, and set this whole ball in motion, the whole Dharma thing.
He became impatient with concentration practices, right? And said, well, this isn't getting me there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, in different areas, he was very patient, like you said, like in yourself, where some areas that we have patience and some we don't. But so that's a very good point. I guess the patience that I wish you were here last week. Where were you? This is great stuff. But yeah, to have patience in our impatience in our practice, where we just can't settle down and can't relax. That's one of the big things that we were talking about last week. And we talked about a lot of different things, but impatience in our personal practice was one of the big things. But we can talk some more about that later too. For some reason tonight, I just don't want to get too wordy before the meditation, because it can be a little bit hard to settle down. Like the mud in the glass there. It gets stirred up, and then so we'll get a nice meditation, and then we'll talk about these things. just take a moment and look at all the things that we can be thankful for in our lives. Even this moment right now, being able to sit here with our friends in silence, meditating. I can't help feel that there's a lot of people that wish they could have a practice like this, or wish that they could be practicing tonight with us, but there's circumstances that have come up where they're unable to. And in the same token, we can be thankful that we are able to stream this on the internet and give other people an opportunity to practice their meditation along with us. And to be thankful for the ability to stream and get the practice out in order to help others and to help other people be happy and more complete. So when we look at thankfulness, there really is no limit. You know, we live in a very affluent society and living in affluent country. When we travel around the world, we know that we are very fortunate in many ways. We have everything from a nice comfortable chair or cushion to sit in, a warm, quiet environment to meditate in. We have nice cars that got us here, nice streets to drive on for the most part. We have the ability to understand the time and what time to get here and what time we're going to be done and all these things. We can be thankful for our health. We can be thankful for our ability to sit in silence, that patience that we have for the practice. And we can be thankful for all of our friends and family. We can be thankful for really everything that we have, even if we aren't enjoying life to its fullest sometimes. We can still be thankful for every breath that we take, and every piece of food that we have, and all the simple things like the clothes that we wear, and all the complicated things, the computers and the cars. There's just no limit. We must realize that we do take all these things for granted most of the time. And just like when we wake up in the morning and we're grateful for all that we have, we can also use that moment when we start our meditation to be grateful each time that we start, very much like a metta or an opening of the heart type of practice. Just being grateful for everything that is and everything that we have. And we can even be grateful for the things that we're able to let go of. So, as mentioned before, that if there's any kind of difficulties or problems that we have in life, it can almost always be traced to the idea that we are attached to something. And this is just a very insightful way of looking at the problems and difficulties that we have. And it's very natural. In fact, there isn't necessarily anything spiritual about it except for the idea that we can be mindful of that fact and be aware of it and look for that attachment any time that we are uncomfortable or desiring something or want something to be different. And every time that we're at peace and we have peace of mind, we usually find that there's no attachments, that we're able to let go of the necessity of anything being a certain way. And really, this is the heart of our practice, this ability to let go and non-attachment. And we know that this produces a freedom for us when we move through the world. Nothing is sticky. And we have different terms for it. Sometimes we feel as if we're in the flow. Sometimes we feel like happy-go-lucky, something like this. But it's really a step towards awakening, one of the many small steps that we can make. And the kind of spirituality that we practice is really the practice itself, the practice of meditation. Nothing pertaining to a higher power or a higher God or anything. But when we practice meditation, we're just looking at this presence, this stillness. And the only way we can do that is to be able to be unattached in the moment. The more unattached we become, the freer we become, the happier we become. And so we bring our attention to the breath. Just let the breath do its work. If we feel we want to calm ourselves, focus on the exhalation. If we feel a little bit too drowsy, focus on the inhalation. And if we want to really feel centered between these two, we can even focus in the middle of the breath. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Okay, thank you. So we, on the eve of Thanksgiving, we think about the things that we can be thankful for. And one of them is just our practice in general, and everybody here is consistent, I think, in our practice. We do it every day as much as we, as often as we can. Might miss a day here or there, but I think most of us are pretty consistent. And hopefully we've all noticed benefits by now. I'm sure we all have. And many of them, can be body, benefits through the body, or benefits through the mind, and hopefully both. If we have a consistent practice and it does reduce stress in our lives, it probably some things that haven't come up for us that would have came up if we didn't have a practice. So it's really hard to tell. If we did have an ailment that got better and we believe that it's through meditation, then we can really point to those benefits and saying that this used to be here and now it's not, and I owe that to meditation. That doesn't happen for everybody, though. I think a lot of it is that things don't happen, that would normally happen, like that are related to stress and those types of things. And did you?
Thank you.
Good catch. All right. That little knee cushion, that's the one you gave her. Yeah, that's I mean, that's good. It means she can't be without it. So.
Yeah, I love it. I know.
Yeah. And and some of the things that we really don't. I think I kind of have a list here of 43. These are some facts, I guess. 43% of all adults suffer adverse health effects from stress. 43%. 75% to 90% of all doctors' office visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. Does that make sense? That sound right? I mean, even a common cold, Stress can play a part in problems such as headaches, high blood pressure, heart problems, diabetes, skin conditions, asthma, arthritis, and of course depression and anxiety. So the idea that we have a practice that can reduce that stress that can be found to be a part of all of these is very, very interesting. And a lot of people, they don't get into meditation to heal anything necessarily. They want to be happier in life, so they start meditating. They might not even know that that anything's, can't put their finger on why they're not completely grounded or completely happy with the way things are, but they just feel like there's something more, And when I look back, that's kind of what my situation was. I just felt like I wasn't, I was raised a Lutheran, and like most of us, I think we probably believe in like a Christian faith while we're young, and then we grow up and we start looking at different avenues, like higher sources, I guess you could say, of spirituality. In other words, discovering who we are in the world rather than the idea that we should, work towards our salvation so that we can rest in this abode, this heavenly abode for the rest of our lives, and not think anything beyond that, and believe that all these miracles have happened in the past and these types of things, like in the Christian, the Christian beliefs that that there is this soul that goes to heaven. And I kind of, at one point in my life, I kind of felt like, I don't necessarily think anything's wrong with those beliefs, but I don't necessarily grasp them, like a lot of people do. And then, so I kind of resorted back to my interest in meditation, and that's when I started meditating more and really grasped, the practice of meditation. It felt like it was a part, could be a part of me, and could be a part of it. And then, one thing leads to another for a lot of us, I think. We just feel like there's something more out there, So we start doing practices like meditation. I know there's a number of people that had that same kind of feeling, and they found it they went through yoga, and then they got into meditation. And then other people, a lot of people, what I'm trying to say is that yoga has brought the awareness of meditation to a lot of people. But generally, I think people just kind of move towards, the practice of meditation because there's some incomplete feelings, physical or mental. And it doesn't have to be real heavy, strong thing or anything like that. But if it'd be kind of, if anybody wants to share like how they or what brought them into meditation, if they remember or care to share their stories, that that would be very interesting. If anybody wants to do that.
That sounds like an invitation to me.
Yeah, young lady, would you like to share?
Oh.
I know you've been meditating for a long, long time.
Well, the thing with me is that I did something that I was told was meditation starting from the time I was 22 years old. And in hindsight, it was not, but it was in the same family. So I did the Silva Method, if anybody knows what that is, which is basically, they call it a dynamic meditation system, and it was really more of self-hypnosis and visualization, and it was extremely powerful in my life. But I didn't start doing Vipassana meditation until I met Shane almost 4 years ago. So it was natural for me to step into it, having been doing something for all those decades. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The Silva Method has a lot of visualization and things like that. And from the standpoint of the meditation practice, if there's something to gain, just to clarify a little bit, if there's something to gain, it usually isn't the Western or the Eastern aspects of meditation. It's more of a Western development, like hypnotherapy or self-hypnosis or something like that, or just imagery, visualization. But if there's a genuine letting go or a relief of these attachments that we have, that is the Eastern meditation practices that Terry is talking about, the Vipassana. So it's interesting because there's a lot of different practices, like the a lot of things like the Sedona method, a lot of newer meditation practices that have come along that aren't really necessarily meditation by Eastern standards, I guess you could say. Again, last week we talked about patience, and a big part of patience is the responding versus reacting. That is a big part of the stress that we have. Like when something comes up, we start to the difference between reacting to it, being reactive. Kind of letting it get the best of us. And as far as responding, and that responding kind of has that flavor of patience behind it. And so that is one of the key points about meditation, how it is a reliever of stress. The average time it takes for something to move through the nervous system is only 1.5 minutes. So if something comes up and we feel like it's a stressful situation, the longest that it would be with us would be like 1.5 minutes, that one situation. So what that is pointing to is that if we can pause, be mindful for that 1.5 minutes, so this isn't necessarily our formal practice of meditation, but the result of it, which is mindfulness. If we can pause for that 1.5 minutes while this is passing through us, then we can handle the situation rather than being reactive. We can respond to it, and that takes a little bit of patience, in many cases that we were talking about. I thought that was very interesting. That's one of the reasons that meditation relieves, the stress within us. And again, there's the old saying that neurons that fire together are wired together. So when we rehearse a looping set of thoughts, we create deeply grooved patterns of emotional reactivity. This means that the more you think and rethink about a certain experience, the stronger the memory and the more easily activated the related feelings become. So the idea is to break this pattern, to break, that looping. It's kind of like a feedback loop, if you know what feedback is. We saw a video of Jeff Beck playing guitar a couple weeks ago. I forgot all about Jeff Beck, but he was using a ton of feedback, where you hit a guitar string and he would turn to his amplifier. The sound come out of the speaker would vibrate the string, and you could hold that note indefinitely if the environment didn't change things. It could, but then then you can play with that. And so it's like us, if we have a repetitive thought, we have a tendency to come back to it again because we think we can fix it. We come back to it again and again and again. It starts this looping, this feedback thing. And it can cause huge problems for us. I think we all know that. But the practice of meditation and mindfulness point to the fact that we can be mindful of that activity and nip it in the bud, so to speak, stop it. And we can actually do that in our formal practice and outside of our formal practice, to relieve that stress. The Buddha taught that to be free, not identified with or possessed by thoughts or feelings is the key. We need to investigate each and every part of our experience with an intimate and mindful attention. And the first step is pausing, taking a break. And because of that 1.5 minutes that it takes for these things to pass through us. That sounds like my neighbor. There's some little. Yeah, I think the school kids don't have school, so they're probably out playing. Yeah.
Yucking it up.
Just a couple more things here, and if there's any questions or anything that you want to. Again, I'm going to read this. I want to make sure here that this is by. I'm sure this is by Pema Chodron. Pema Chodron from the Tibetan nun that I was speaking about earlier. She said, first of all, about the aggression and the patience is a antidote to anger and aggression. Aggression comes in many forms: resentment, bitterness, and so on. When we begin to investigate, you notice one thing, that whenever there is a pain of any kind, the pain of aggression, grieving, loss, irritation, resentment, jealousy, it looks like indecision, and physical pain, if you really look at that, you can find out for yourself that behind the pain, there's always something related to it. And that is the attachment that we were talking about earlier. There's always something that we're holding on to. As soon as you discover that behind your pain is something you're holding on to, you are at a place that you will frequently experience on the spiritual path. After a while, it seems like almost every moment of your life, you're there at a point where you realize you actually have a choice. You have a choice whether to open or close, whether to hold on or let go, whether to harden or soften. The choice is presented to you again and again and again. For instance, you're feeling pain. You look deeply into it, and you notice that there's something very hard you're holding on to. And then you have a choice. You can let go of it, which basically means you connect with the softness behind all of that hardness. It requires an enormous patience, even to be curious enough to look, to investigate, and then when to realize that you have a choice, and that there's actually something there that you're attached to. It requires great patience to keep going into it, because you will want to go into denial, to shut down. You're going to say to yourself, I don't want to see this. You'll be afraid, because even if you're starting to get close to it, the thought of letting go is usually very frightening. You may feel that you're going to die, or that something is going to die within you. And you will be right. If you let go, something will die, but it's something that needs to die, and you will benefit greatly from its death. And I think that anytime that we make any really spiritual progress in life, it's because something really has died, within us, if you know what I mean. I think we can, if we look back and see that when we made this progress, in not only in meditation but in life, that there was something that so big that we learned, and we were able to investigate it and figure it out, and then eventually to be able to let go of it, to actually let go and move on. It's always those things that we let go of that are the big teachings for us. It's not the stuff that we gather and hang on to. It's interesting. Any comments or questions or anything?
How not we are attached to there is attachment. How we find out
What that?
we attach with attachment.
How do we find?
Find the attachment.
Yeah,
How
it.
we realize that
We-
we attached to something that is causing pain.
Yeah, we have to become very sensitive to it. If there's something that we cannot let go of, something that we say, I don't want this in my life, then there's an attachment. It's very difficult. I know that you have children. Even you're attached to your daughter. I met your daughter. Of course you are. She's a beautiful person and everything, and so that there is an attachment there, and you can feel that, right? But there's other things that we're attached to as well. Things that we can kind of use these other attachments as a barometer. Things like how do we identify with ourselves? That I am a teacher, or I am I am healthy or I am unhealthy or whatever these things are. If we can, oftentimes one of the biggest things that we have to let go of is that identification that we have, that label that we have for ourselves. And we have to let go of all that stuff at one point. Everything has to go. I would never tell anybody that they should let go of their family members, and that kind of thing. But sometimes, when I visit with people in the other room here, and they're having a horrible relationship, sometimes it comes very close to deciding whether a person should stay in that relationship. And sometimes, that is a big letting go for people. A lot of times people have to let go of their addictions, We have, people that work in the recovery business in here. Addictions are huge things to let go of, and probably one of the most worthwhile and most noticeable things, as far as a person's life. Let go of these cravings, these difficult cravings that poison us in some way, So we can be attached to anything. We can be attached to even very healthy things, and for the most part, we think that's okay, and it might be, but if we're attached to something that it's gonna hurt when that thing is pulled away from us, then we have to realize it. We have to be mindful of that. We can be attached to life, and if that's the case, when the time comes for us to be separated from this earthly life, it's going to be very difficult for us. And from the Buddhist standpoint, that if that happens, then we would be reborn and come back because of that desire and that attachment to life itself. There's some flyers for the retreat there if anybody wants one. Otherwise, that's not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So
Not this Sunday, but
next Sunday, yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.